Boa tarde a todos. Iniciando a tarde de hoje, nós vamos ter a participação do Bill McDowell. Ele não fala português, então, em alguns momentos, nós vamos estar falando em inglês, tá? Ele está usando o tradutor, então a gente combinou que no começo da apresentação eu falaria em português, né? Porque a maioria da audiência não fala inglês. E aí depois a gente segue para o idioma do inglês. Eu gostaria de agradecer ao professor Edson por aceitar contribuir com a gente aqui na palestra de hoje. Meu nome é Jocely, eu vou estar mediando a palestra de agora à tarde, tá bom? E eu vou apresentar, então, os nossos 3 palestrantes, né? Que é o Bill, professor Edson e o professor Raildo, né, professor nosso aqui da matemática. Bill McDowell, he has his bachelor in computer science, cognitive science, and philosophy at Carnegie Mellon University. His master science is in computer science at Stanford University, and he prototyped various ML and NLP, that's AI programs, models, as a research engineer across several labs at Stanford, Penn State University, and Johns Hopkins, and Carnegie Mellon. Thank you, Bill, for accepting my invitation. I'm sure the talk will be great. So, Professor Edson Takashi Matsubara is from Computer Science Faculty from FACOM, Universidade Federal de Mato Grosso do Sul. His bachelor is in Informatics, Mathematics, and Computer Science in the Institute of University of São Paulo. And his PhD is in Computer Science at Mathematics and Computer Science Institute of University of São Paulo. And his master is in Computer Science at the same department. His research interest is in machine learning, semi-supervised learning, and movement recognition. And thank you so much, Professor Edson, to accept my invitation to this afternoon. So the last one is Professor Dr. Raildo Santos de Lima. He is a professor here at MEF in the campus Paranaíba. His bachelor's is in math and his PhD is in engineer at Universidade Estadual de São Paulo, Júlio de Mesquita Filho, Unesp. His master degree is in mathematics at Universidade Federal de Uberlândia. So, at first, Bill will provide a brief overview of the AI and some notes he has. So you can take over here, Bill.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? Is this working? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like Professor Jocely said, I just so you know, my background, I generally worked on like applying AI stuff to language usually. Most recently, I was working at Duolingo, if you know Duolingo, working on using AI to do things like correct grammatical mistakes in the language that people are learning on Duolingo, for example, or giving people different like tips about their grammar generated by AI. So that's sort of like where my head is most of the time. For this presentation thing, I thought I'd keep it kind of open-ended because I'm not really sure like what everybody's background is or what the sort of common ground in the room is. So I'd like to like make it kind of free form and you can kind of ask questions and stuff. But before we do that, I'll just sort of give an overview of what I think we're talking about when we say AI. So in my mind, AI is something that is not really a new thing, sort of a ongoing process that's been happening for a long time, depending on how you frame it. Like, it's been happening for thousands of years, in the sense that you can kind of see it as just automation, where that automation applies to just like human labor and human reasoning or perception. When I say applies to that, I mean like that the process of AI is trying, what we're trying to do is automate those things. We're trying to automate our labor and trying to automate the way we think, and sort of externalize it onto things like computers. And yeah, so like I said, that's been happening for a long time. You can kind of arguably seeing it as starting with like the development of logic with like the Greeks and people like that a long time ago, and eventually that developed into computers, and now we're talking about AI. So some concrete examples of that, I guess, you know, if it's not clear to people, like the most recent examples that I guess are popular are kind of these large language models, like GPT. I assume people have heard of that stuff. And then prior to that, you have simple things, I guess, on maybe a further down the spectrum would be like a calculator is another example. It's maybe not impressive to us anymore, but like it does add very large numbers, and that's a pretty intelligent thing. It can add much larger numbers than I can. And then there's other things in between there, like playing chess, for example. In the 90s, I think that was the first time that like a computer beat the chess world champion. And then there's other forms of game playing, like playing the game Go is another more recent example. And then there's other kinds of like broad understanding, like understanding of text, like I mentioned, that I tend to work on, or understanding of images. For example, like in a self-driving car, you have the car sort of see the road in front of it and process the images and then decide where to turn based on what the images look like. And then in the so those are all kind of examples of automation of reasoning or perception or what's in our heads. And then there's, on the side of automation of labor, there's kind of different kinds of robotics or things in factories, like different machines that do things. And like I said before, you can see that as kind of in a wide context as growing out of, you know, in a long term, like the Industrial Revolution, you could see it's like the precursor to this. And then I guess I should say that in my head, and I think people generally agree that like the field of AI, like as a research field, has kind of been split for a while between sort of fuzzy, uninterpretable, messy kind of methods that are hard to explain, and then like sort of clean, nice, intelligible methods that you can talk about. So concretely, on the one end, you have like machine learning models like neural nets that are you can't really say why they make the predictions they do, and those are the sorts of things that are in the like popular news now, like ChatGPT. That's an example of something that's messy and like its predictions can't be explained. Then on the other end, there are more explainable kind of methods, like different like logic-based things. And so there's sort of a spectrum between these two kinds of methods, and I think most of the things we think of as AI sort of fall somewhere within that spectrum. Yeah, so that's kind of like a broad idea of like at the top level what AI means to me. Before going any further, I thought I would ask then, like, well, first, I maybe can I ask for like people to raise their hands to say like what they're familiar with? Is that an option? Can I do that? Jocely? Is that? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear.
Yes, vocês conseguiram entender o que pela legenda? Ele pediu para vocês levantarem a mão. Could you repeat just the last sentence you said, because just the last sentence you said it?
I asked if people could raise their hands. Do you mean before that?
Yeah, I didn't. I forget just what you said.
Before that, I was talking about like some methods are interpretable, some are not. So.
Okay, pretty clear.
Sorry. So can I ask a question and then have people raise their hands to get an idea about what people know?
Yes,
I can do that? Okay. So the first thing I'm just wondering, like, is it true that everybody sort of like has seen the recent news, like it's in the news, like ChatGPT and those kinds of things? Like, are people aware of that generally? Is that can you just raise your hand if you've heard of ChatGPT, for example?
Por favor, levantem a mão se vocês vêm acompanhando as notícias recentes, por exemplo, como do chat GPT. Alguém já ouviu alguma coisa? Caso sim, ergam as mãos. Ninguém ouviu sobre chat GPT, não acredito. Como assim?
I think they're lying because they're using to study.
They don't want to create a proof.
They are using to make their homework. They say, no, we don't know this thing, but actually we've been using that for doing our homework and things and things like that.
Ninguém quer criar provas que usam, né, o chat GPT para fazer o trabalho de vocês. Ocasionalmente, claro, né? Okay.
So did like half the people raise their hand? And then you think 100% of them know about it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they never heard, like most of 70% of our audience never heard about ChatGPT, according to them.
Yeah, I believe.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right. Another question I have is just like, what proportion of people are familiar with like basic statistics? Like how many people know what a regression model is?
Para vocês, por favor, levantar a mão se vocês sabem sobre estatística ou, por exemplo, regressão linear. São familiarizados com estatística? Por favor, levantem as mãos, se sim. Okay, like 7 or maybe 10 people here know about statistics.
10 out of, and then there's like 50 people there? Is that right? It's like 20%?
Yeah, I think it's like 50, around 50, 60.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. And then my other question is just like, how many people have written any kind of computer program before?
Oh, okay. I think that's no one, but I'm gonna ask.
No?
Outra pergunta vocês estão conseguindo acompanhar na tradução? Quantos de vocês já escreveram algum programa? Tipo, formularam algum programa de computador? Alguém? Tem alguém? Você, Bruno? Bruno? Você já escreveu um programa? Ok, nós temos... sorry. We have one person here who raised his hand.
Okay, yeah, I'm just asking because I want to know like what I can say and what I need to explain. Okay, that's helpful.
I'm just on the YouTube, 2 people say they know about ChatGPT. Like we have 22 people watching us over YouTube, and 2 people answer they know about ChatGPT.
Okay. And I assume probably more of them know, but they just, yeah.
Me too.
Okay. Okay. So I guess my impression is that like this is interesting to people because of the recent news. Like that's why we're here, because of like what's been going on in the news. I think that. All right. Just trying to make sure I understand like what's happening. Okay. So then I had some like broad topics. Maybe people could ask questions about. Or you can ask pretty much anything you want, but like here's some ideas. One would be about the history of AI. I can talk more about that. Another would be like more details about how some of these systems work, like how does machine learning work, how do other AI systems work that don't use machine learning. How do LLMs like ChatGPT work? If you have questions about like the social or like economic context for it, I can try to talk about that, although I'm not like the most informed person, but I have some vague thoughts. And then also if you have like questions about, I know there's a lot of speculation about where AI is going and if it's going to take over the world or something. If you have questions of that form, you can also talk about that. So yeah, if people want to just ask questions, and if there aren't any questions, I can just talk about whatever. But like, yeah, I want to see if people like, what are people here for? Like, what do you want to know?
Bill, do you think that AI is going to take over the world?
I guess not right now, at least. I don't think it's any kind of near-term problem. Like, I think it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. Like if you say like 10 years from now, but even then, I don't think AI is going to take over the world. I think it could have a large impact on the world. I think in my head, the more like dangerous sort of thing, or like thing that's more likely to be an issue is not AI itself taking over the world, but people using AI for things that will be beneficial and also be detrimental to people. So it's just like any other technology, it's going to make people more powerful to do things, and they can use that in bad ways and in good ways. I think it's already having like large economic impacts, I think, but that those impacts are not, I don't think those are things that happen overnight. It's not like some event's going to happen and everyone's going to suddenly lose their jobs. It's more like gradually things become more automatable and more efficient, and then fewer people are needed for certain things, and then some jobs are created that are now possible because of like new automation. I think it's all a very sort of gradual process, and that process maybe leads to more people having more power to do more bad things to each other and more good things to each other.
Yeah.
And then maybe in the limit, you have systems that no one is in control over doing things, but like it's a very speculative thing, and I don't think it's a near term, like it's not something that's like an immediate worry. It's like a kind of like a meteor like an asteroid hitting the Earth type of scenario. Like it could happen, but it's probably down the road if it happens at all.
So do you think that like I've seen so many companies that are using GPT and generative AI to do customer service and many other different type of kind of jobs that people are usually doing. And when I see those things, sometimes those models they can hallucinate quite easily on this, depending on what are you doing. So my question is, I don't know what's your perspective from the industry point, but at least in my perspective, it can be very dangerous to put a generative AI in some some chat services. And what is your point of view regarding to using generative AI for some jobs that people are nowadays they're using ChatGPT for many different things, and sometimes it's dangerous. What's your perspective on that?
So I can talk about it, like some concrete examples at Duolingo. So I was at Duolingo working, and we were using generative AI for stuff for the last year or so that I was there, and there were generally like at least two different kinds of use case. So one would be like using generative AI to generate text that like people would use in real time. So in the Duolingo case, you have people learning language, and the real time kind of application would be that they get to chat with a like ChatGPT style bot in the language they're learning, and it like helps them learn in real time, and the model is outputting like text in real time for them. And then the other kind of application is like internally people would use the model to generate text for like new exercises within the app, and they would be like people would review that content before actually putting it in the final app. And so to answer your question, like I think that for when you're generating stuff in real time, so for customer service or something like that, like you said, that's gonna maybe hallucinate or output incorrect or misleading things, or just not work correctly, maybe like at like 10% of the time, or some small percentage of the time that matters, or that's at least one of the issues. And so then it won't like work reliably out of the box all the time unless you massage it quite a lot. So it might be a little bit like premature for a lot of those applications. But then on the other hand, like if you can have people sort of manually curate the output before putting it in front of like the end customer or whatever, or have some kind of quality control system in place, it's much more like likely to be effective in that case.
Yes.
But like in the Duolingo case, we did do the feature where we have like it's used in real time. It's just that there's going to be cases where it fails, and like I guess as long as you're in a context where like the risk of that, like the cost of it making a mistake is low, like maybe it's okay. But if you're in a context where if it makes a mistake, you're going to be like some catastrophe is going to happen, like that's probably not good, because the models are still, even though it's kind of amazing some of the things they can do, it's like everything still only really works like 90% of the time, or some like high fraction of the time, but there's still like this long tail of bad cases where it's going to fail, and people like because of the nature of the technology, like we don't know how to fix it reliably. And so yeah, like you said, it's kind of dangerous especially if you're trying to use it in cases where there's like a high cost to a mistake.
I see. All right. Okay. Do pessoal que está ouvindo aí, sorry, I will speak in Portuguese to the audience. Do pessoal que está ouvindo aí, vocês não têm nenhuma pergunta assim relativa à área de IA para o Bill, para a gente, que vocês têm curiosidade, alguma coisa que vocês gostariam de saber, né? Não sei se alguém tem alguma pergunta. I'm asking for questions. Alguém?
A gente tem uma aqui do Tom, que está nos auxiliando na transmissão aqui, nosso servidor.
Boa tarde, Bill.
Pode falar. He's gonna ask something. We're just waiting. Jocely, ele vai perguntar alguma coisa?
I'm sorry, his microphone is turned off. Sorry.
Ok.
Ontem nós tivemos uma palestra aqui neste mesmo local e o professor disse que atualmente em países de primeiro mundo, Europa, Estados Unidos, Japão, a inteligência artificial ela faz parte do cotidiano das pessoas de um modo num grau mais elevado do que em países de terceiro mundo. Por exemplo, no Brasil, isso ainda é uma novidade, né? E é por isso que eu acho que o tema dessa nossa semana de estudo é sobre inteligência artificial. Eu queria saber o quanto essa tecnologia de inteligência artificial já faz parte aí nos Estados Unidos, Europa, o quanto ela já está presente no cotidiano das pessoas. Obrigado.
I think I got the translation.
Okay.
So my understanding of the question is like how much is artificial intelligence present in first world countries relative, and like, is it everywhere? And then like how much, like, is it, how much is it in developing countries? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think the one case where it's very clearly in use everywhere is in any kind of like social media. That this is like I mean, in the case that's very consumer facing and kind of ubiquitous and that like regular people touch every day in a very obvious way, and like that people are aware of because it's in the news and stuff, is in social media. So like in Facebook or Google or I guess not just social media, but any kind of like large internet company, Duolingo. Like if you're getting, I guess it's on YouTube, right? So YouTube, your feed of video recommendations that's AI, like what's chosen to show to you. In the case of Google, like Google search is AI, basically. Facebook, like your Facebook feed, what ads are shown to you. Netflix, what movies are shown to you. And I assume in Brazil, like all the things I'm saying are too, right? So like it's in, at least in the like large internet company sense, like it's in Brazil just as much as like in the US.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then there's other cases like when you're on an airplane, the airplane is probably like largely automated in terms of its like flying. Like the pilot, there is a pilot that's flying the plane, but like to a large degree, most of his job is taken up by computers. At least that's my understanding, and that's been true for a while now. It's not like the last year or something. It's been true for like maybe a couple decades or something. And then I mean, even like in your car, even if your car is not self-driving, if it's like a relatively new car, a lot of those systems are like your car, the way it adjusts the like transmission and stuff, I think is like done by a computer. And you can see that as, in a sense, AI, although like not a more recent form of it. So yeah, I think it's kind of all over the place in a hidden way, to the degree that computers are everywhere, like AI is sort of everywhere. And then the most recent kind of like developments that people think of AI are mostly, I think, in like in the social media companies, like I said. And then of course there's like factories and like robotics and factories and things like that. But that's not the kind that I think everyday people experience as much.
Just to add something to the conversation. I think AI is as much present as in the United States and here in Brazil, I think. If you look at the Netflix and Alexa and all this, it's all over the place, no matter it's in the United States or anywhere else. The main difference is, well, maybe we don't have much access to Tesla models and some sort of technologies that are more restricted to United States customers. But in general, we can buy almost anything as much as American people can have. So I don't think that the technology is that much different from here to America, at least from my perspective. The main difference is that most of the research headquarters is the places where they do research. So here in Brazil, our companies, they don't do as much research because we extract oil, plant soybeans and things like that, and we don't have these high-tech companies like Google, Facebook, and companies more related to the tech industry. But apart from that, I believe from the customer perspective, I believe it's almost the same, with the exceptions of those things that we don't have really access because they don't sell things here. My ultimate example is, I think, is Tesla. We don't have. I know that rich people here in Brazil, they have Tesla, but we can go in the city center and buy a Tesla, as usually occurs in every place, everywhere in the United States. But usually it's more or less the same as here, I think. Anyone else have another question? There is a question: how do we prevent bad use of AI? I think is one of the questions.
Well, I think there's a lot of effort now to think about that. There's some research on trying to manage the bias in AI models, for example, make sure it doesn't affect people in affect some groups in more negative ways than others and things like that. In reality, I think that the history of technology is kind of just people try their best not to screw up too bad, and then they do, and then people fix it. I think other technological decisions are also very similar to the kinds of trade-offs you get in AI. That one good example, I was listening to a talk by an AI ethics guy a while ago, and he gave an example of some question of how to engineer car brakes. So that when people are engineering the car brake, they can decide how sensitive the brake is, and that's going to determine a trade-off between how likely the person driving the car is to die if they're in an accident, or how likely they're going to hit somebody in front of them. And when they make that engineering decision, they're implicitly deciding, what is the value of the life in that scenario? Who do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the driver or the pedestrian that they might hit, or what? You're making a decision that's going to affect people, especially whenever the car is going to be driven by millions and millions of people across millions of cases. And this is kind of the same thing in AI, where if you make any given decision about trying to push the bias of a large language model in a certain direction, it might help with respect to might help manage the misinformation about something, or reduce the amount of nonsense that it spews out with respect to some topic. But then you might, as a result of that, increase some other kind of nonsense because the biases trade off against each other. I think it's just my personal view, but I think that like people are doing their best to like try to like do research to try to mitigate these things, but I think that like to a large degree, a lot of technological progress ends up being like empirical about its ethics in kind of a unethical way, arguably, but we're sort of stuck as human beings not knowing what the outcomes of our actions are. That's my feeling about it. I don't know, that's not a very informative answer, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you have maybe Professor Matsubara, like if you have a different take on that, like if you disagree with me, or like if you...
No, I completely agree. I think again, as I've already told you, AI is another tool, and it's a tool, so you can, you can use it for good or bad use, no matter how good you are at trying to avoid that. It's always gonna happen. I don't think that it's the same as it's a knowledge tool. I think that's the main reason that people are discussing a lot about AI, in my opinion, is that because they don't know what is the technology, and people are usually afraid of that. And when people are afraid of things, they tend to overemphasize things that are not that good, but can be used for both ways. I don't think you can forbid people to do bad things and also the good things. It's really difficult. It's just a tool. It's like a matrix multiplication algorithm that you can use for good and bad use. It's for mitigate that is more related to educate people than to the technology. It's not really related to the technology itself. At least that's my point of view on that.
Did Professor Raildo, if you have anything else to say about it?
Sounds good. Bill, we have some questions from the audience here. I don't know if Raildo wants to speak before, or if we already have 2 students who encourage you to ask here, so have to take advantage of that.
2 questions. One, it's your opinion about how AI can impact other people's jobs. And the other one, it's about regulation on the government side. So as we had a few months back, Hollywood writers protesting about the use of AI for facilitating their work and something about this. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so for the first question about jobs, and I should say, like, I'm just like an AI research person. I'm not like an economist or anything. So like, my opinion is probably, you're probably just as informed as I am in some sense, but I can just say what I think. So for jobs, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, that like, I think it'll make a lot of things more efficient, especially the recent advances with like generative AI, like ChatGPT and stuff, might make it's already making like software development more efficient. It helps write boilerplate code. I think Professor Matsubara mentioned like customer service, I think could help there. Although, like I said, it's still pretty spotty. So talking to a customer service ChatGPT is probably going to be at least as much of a headache as talking to a customer service person. And I don't know how well it's going to, I mean, it might work somewhat, but it's probably going to be a headache for a while. But things like that could be automated. And then I mentioned in Duolingo the effort to like use GPT to write language exercises like that. I think that worked pretty well. And I think there's a lot of companies like that where there's people writing a lot of like copy, like a lot of like producing a lot of texts that requires some thought to produce, but doesn't require, like, it's like not extremely complicated text. Like a lot of jobs like that, like ad copy also, I think they could be made more efficient. But it's not necessarily the case that like people that do these jobs will lose their jobs. It's more that their job will become more efficient, and maybe the total number of those jobs will be fewer because the job is done more efficiently. So you just like need fewer people to do the same amount of work in the same amount of time. But I think a lot of those things will at least become more efficient. Things where you have to produce a lot of text, a lot of like relatively simple text, or like knowledge working type of jobs, maybe like tax type stuff, maybe could be like made more efficient. And then I think there's another domain of sort of on the more like, I think not knowledge work, but like human labor side, like truckers. I think there's companies right now working on making like self-driving trucks. So I guess there will be less demand for truckers if that does work out. It seems like it might work out in the next couple of years, but it's been, on the other hand, like people have been saying this for the last like 5 to 10 years or whatever, and it still hasn't quite panned out yet. But it does look like they're getting closer. But even when that happens, like it's quite possible that there will still be lots of truckers. There might just be fewer of them. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, related to that, there's also factory jobs where like human workers might be replaced by robots. So like in Amazon warehouses and stuff, I think this happens already to some degree.
I think a good example on this, it's the 2005 movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the newer version, that you had the Charlie's dad working on the toothpaste factory, and they got the factory automated, and he was fired, but later he was hired again to fix the automated machine. So it's kind of, we have to, it's my opinion, we have to improve, kind of improve ourselves to, I mean, the machines won't fix themselves. So there is a margin for kind of new job surface in the spectrum. And it's kind of like this, we have new opportunities, and for now, I think a lot of people are not getting, or at least embrace those opportunities that are greater. And I agree with you that it's things that we work, I mean, 10 years, maybe 15 years from in the future. And in Brazil, maybe 100. we are the latest to receive new technologies due to high taxes, and the government here makes things difficult on this side, but it's a new thing, and I think we all should embrace it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time that there are like new jobs that replace the old ones, and that I think that will be true to some degree. There are also cases where people just do lose their jobs, like maybe not directly, like in the sense that you're fired because now we have a robot, but like, I mean, even that can happen. But I think the other thing is just there are fewer jobs of a given type because the work is more efficiently done by an automated process. And then like, even if there are more jobs of another kind that replace those jobs, it's not necessarily the case that like everybody can do the new jobs that could do the old jobs, because maybe it requires some kind of special skill or like more education or something. And so then you do end up with people who are displaced from from the workforce because of that. I think that's definitely happens, but I think it's the same. It's not like AI is like an especially special case of this. I think it's just like any kind of technological progress that automates things tends to like have this kind of effect. But overall, like, yeah, I agree that like there will be new jobs to replace the old jobs. I don't know what they'll look like. Yeah, so that was the first question.
The second one was about regulation.
The second one was on the your thoughts on regulation by the government side. Back in the U.S., you guys had Hollywood writers and I think producers that were protesting because of ChatGPT and other things that the industry was automating things to accelerate the producing movies and stuff. And I kind of want what is your thoughts on the government regulating AI?
So for like the copyright infringement type stuff, or like, you know, using artists' work without their consent, I think that there is like kind of an inherent conflict of interest right now or like a conflict between like the current AI methods, the large language models specifically, like kind of necessarily rely on having large amounts of data. And it might be the case that that data comes from sources where people don't want you to use it. I mean, it's been the case so far that on the internet, like, people have not cared because this just hasn't come up as an issue. But it could be that people don't want like their data to be part of AI models, and if that's the case, then like those models just aren't going to work, at least in their current form and with the current methods that we have. And so there is just like a conflict, and like, I mean, to the degree that that's true, like in the artist's case, like if they don't want their art to be in there, like if that's true in mass, then that's just a conflict. And whether the government should regulate that, like, I think is or how it should be regulated, I think it's a hard question. Like the question is kind of, do people agree that the like benefit of having the output of these AI models is like worth having their their paintings and stuff sucked up into it? Like in the worst case, like that is just the question. Like there are like so basically I've given you kind of just the scenario is like difficult, and maybe the government should do something, but I don't. I think it's unclear what is in the best interest of people. My personal bias, I guess, would be just let them train the models. But that's just my, like, I don't have a stake in the game in terms of like I don't produce paintings. So there are methods to try to mitigate this. Like there could be, like, people could. I think there's been some talk about like having some kind of like marking embedded in the files, like some kind of signature or something in like files that represent paintings from artists to like tell the AI models or the scrapers that take those files to like not use them. And maybe the government could like try to enforce that like people obey those kind of like signatures or whatever. So there could be like solutions like that, and maybe those should be the kinds of regulations that end up in place. But like I think right now those kinds of solutions, like, it's kind of unknown what will work and like whether it's realistic. We're kind of like in a very murky territory. So I mean, I just don't have enough information to have a strong opinion about like what the regulation should be, because I think the methods that would like actually implement the regulations are are murky at best themselves. And then the question is like, which methods are the good ones on top of like, what are the methods? So like, there's just like too much complexity to have an opinion. I don't know. With respect to that particular regulation issue, there's other regulation issues for like I think that there was some talk about having like making it more difficult for people to train large models unless like the government permitted it. So like OpenAI or something like that might have like a license to like train their model, but you can't just do it like as some random person because it's too dangerous. Like I think there's been talk like this. My personal opinion about that kind of stuff is that like it sounds like it's just going to lead to more kind of centralization, and like the people who have enough money will be able to afford to train the model, and I kind of think that there's a trade-off there, because the current tendency is toward more and more centralization, and I think that's part of the problem. So like the government regulation can do harm and good, depending on how it's implemented. Another big part of the problem is the people that produce the regulations, like aren't necessarily the people who are informed about how the stuff actually works. And so then the regulations can just end up being ineffective because they're like talking kind of nonsense. But if you can have like very concrete methods for like imposing restrictions on the models that are effective for like representing people's preferences, and you can have people informed about those in the government and they can make good regulation, then I think it would be good to like, probably, especially if this is going to have like large impacts, it would be good that there are some kind of regulations. I guess at the moment, I think that's probably not true because the methods are still murky. And so like my bias would be to like hold off on like hard imposed regulation until like we even know what's possible. But that's just my bias. Like that's just me, you know. Do other people have thoughts? I don't know. Yeah, also, feel free to disagree with me completely. Like I'm not just totally contradict me. Yeah. It's okay.
And Bill, here I believe it happens the same in the US. We have the political problems in the same, more or less the same way as United States had in the past. And in my point of view, that is really related to those AI methods that are behind those big social medias like Facebook and YouTube, and because they usually emphasize a sequence of videos regarding they try to put in your screen the videos that are more likely that you will see, and then you will emphasize the bubble of the knowledge of that person, and make, we live huge problems in both countries. And to my understanding, you said something about maybe we can regulate something in that aspect. What do you think about that? Because there's a huge bias on these models to make profit from the companies, and that's okay because the company needs to make money. But at the same time, as a user and as a society, that can be very harmful for us. And what do you think about this bias of the algorithm, that they can just put things that has more probability that people will click on that, or maybe it can be beneficial if we have some sort of regulation that, at least on some I don't know. That's at the same time, that's very dangerous, because if you try to forbid some directions of the navigation of the person, then maybe you are still making bias of his So what do you think about how this AI, especially inside of these social medias that are there just to make more money? What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say like what if I don't know what like specific regulations would work to like help deal with that problem, like the problem of getting people stuck in like rabbit holes of recommendations, videos, and things. Like I'm not sure what regulation would help beyond you know, some, like there are forms of content that are just made illegal to distribute, like, you know, different kinds of pornography or whatever. Like I think that's a fair way to regulate that in the at least in the extreme cases. But then if you try to impose those kinds of laws on like more general like political speech or like just false information, I would think my personal bias is not to impose those kinds of laws on speech. I think it's like speech is important to remain free is like a like primary like necessity for any kind of democracy if we have one. But I mean, there could be other kinds of regulation on like the form of the algorithm or something, and I don't know what that would look like. And it's hard to evaluate in the abstract without like knowing what a concrete proposal is, and I don't have one in mind, so I don't know. My bias is just that I think that like in the ideal world, the way you deal with this is to make people more educated, to like deal with the problem on the receiving end. And unfortunately, we're in the world where like it's very far away from that, it seems like. So then that's why it feels very complicated, with like, you know, influencing elections and things like that. That doesn't seem good. But yeah, I don't know. I without any like very specific like regulation proposals, I just don't know. And I don't know what they would be exactly.
Okay. I have one question. I don't know if we have time. I think we are finished. But here in Brazil, I've seen some software companies that are using Copilot and ChatGPT to develop software. And the time is reduced greatly in many different tasks on coding software. It seems to me that if we start using so much this idea of generative AI to produce code, we can go to the direction where we are just replicating codes that already exist on the internet, you know. And my question is, what do you think about if we start using this technology in broadly being used for all developers around the world, and at some point where everybody, I know that's never going to happen exactly like that, but suppose that everybody start coding just using Copilot, and maybe we can start forgetting old-fashioned ways to programming and having problems to solve some more advanced problems. Do you think that at what point do you think it's beneficial and or detrimental using this technology to code, to develop software?
Well, I think without the technology, people are already just, a lot of what happens when people code, it might be that they go on Stack Overflow and copy some code off of Stack Overflow and paste it into their code, and paste it into their files. So,
yeah, that's more or less the same.
yeah, and in that way, like, it's not really a new thing, although it might be increasing that amount, like increasing what's going on there. And maybe an outcome of that is that people like forget how to do basic stuff that was important before. But I think again, like I think that is was already happening before, in the sense that, like, you know, decades ago people were writing more probably like assembly language or like C or something, and then they moved on to languages that extracted a lot of the machine out, and like that process is happening even without any kind of like generative stuff. And you can see it as a negative thing in that people are doing mindless stuff, but probably people are going to do mindless stuff no matter what. And then I think, like, even if you end up with like a large number of people doing mindless stuff, like if there is a need for people to go back and write assembly or like understand some like more complicated algorithm that everybody forgot how to use because they just use the standard implementation of it, like if there's a need to go back, like somebody will go back, I think. But on the other hand, like you could see it as a part of a larger problem, which is like people, when things are automated, not just within coding, but within like larger systems, like in bureaucracies, where like part of the bureaucracy is automated, like the insurance company, for example, has like a lot of automated like tools for managing the numbers and everything. Like when you have these like partially automated systems, I think a lot of the people in them get very kind of like they see parts of their job as like not their job, but the machine's job. And then they're sort of like checked out with respect to that stuff. Like they're not like fully engaged with it. And then the result of that is you have this system that like is partially broken because the algorithms are broken and nobody knows how to fix them except for like a few people in the IT department. And then everybody else is just kind of like throwing up their hands and like, I don't know what to do. Like this constantly happens to me when I call the insurance company or like the tax office. It happened today, actually. And like that might be a problem where like people sort of like gradually check out more, like they're like more kind of removed from their everyday jobs because everything is like partially automated. Like I think there might be something bad going on there, but I really don't. I think that's just like, I don't know if there's anything to be done about it. Like it's just
yeah. I think I have the same feeling. There is something bad happening, but I'm not sure what exactly is happening. You know, that's something that will pay the price at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Boa tarde para todos. Eu gostaria de fazer algumas colocações aqui, porque eu estou compondo a mesa mais como um usuário, né, do que um especialista. Como o professor Bill havia perguntado se alguém aqui já tinha executado algum tipo de código, né, no ChatGPT. No meu caso, por exemplo, eu tenho observado que mesmo tendo um conhecimento muito pequeno de programação, que eu tenho desde a graduação, hoje eu consigo criar códigos e manipular os códigos dentro do ChatGPT, né? Então, como um usuário leigo, eu fico observando essas questões, né, de como que nós podemos ter esse tipo de interação com essa tecnologia e conseguir produzir algum tipo de conteúdo, de trabalho, que antes eu precisaria ter um conhecimento muito grande de programação para conseguir fazer isso, né? Eu tenho uma pergunta para o professor Bill e o professor Edson, né, se eles puderem comentar um pouco sobre o assunto. Eu imagino que esse advento seja, talvez, consequência da rede Transformer, né, de 2017. Parece que, através da rede Transformer, a partir de 2017, o crescimento de todo o desenvolvimento tecnológico da IA, ela foi, né, num crescimento meio que exponencial. E o que vocês acham se, por exemplo, talvez daqui a alguns anos, uns 5 anos talvez, poderia haver uma outra revolução, né, tal como foi essa revolução da rede Transformer de 2017? Essa é a questão.
You got it, Bill?
So is the question, so tell me if this is right, like the question is if the like recent performance of the generative AI, like being able to write code, is due to the transformer architecture,
Yeah, exactly.
mainly,
Yeah.
and then if there will be another advancement in another 5 years that might like make it even more like possible to do even more things. Is that basically the question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think part of it is the transformer. I think and this is my view, right? But so part of it is the transformer. Part of it is having access to very large amounts of data, and also having access of to large amounts of computation. To like train a model to do like coding tasks, for example. Or well, in GPT's case, like train a model to model the distribution of English, and then as a outcome of that, maybe do some coding tasks. But like, yeah, I think there's maybe a few main factors are like the large amount of data, large amount of computation, and then like a few different algorithmic advances, including the transformer, or like attention and neural nets. And those algorithmic advances are kind of part of why they are helpful, is that they are enabling the use of like the very large amount of data and the very large amount of computation. So like the transformer, I think part of what it is responsible, it's doing several things, I think, at the same time, but part of what it's doing is it's making it possible to parallelize the training of a neural net across okay. Professor, do you want to say goodbye? Or?
Okay. So, sorry, everybody. I need to leave. I have another meeting now. So I'll leave to Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I'll just finish my answer. Yeah, so it's enabling like parallelizing large amounts of computation across a large amount of data. And that sort of makes it possible to do things that weren't possible before. And currently, I think we don't know how to like do these fancy tasks without having this very large amount of computation with this very large amount of data. But it might, in theory, it might be possible to do with smaller computation and smaller data, because it seems like people don't use this amount of resource to code, for example, or to think or go about our day. We use a lot less resource. So yeah, so basically, yes, the transformer is like a big part of it, but part of what it's doing is just like letting you use a lot of data and a lot of computation to train a really big model. And then, so does that answer the first part of the question? Or is it? Yeah. Okay. And then the second part, whether there will be another thing in 5 years, I think so. I think there will be like probably more algorithmic advances. Part of the limitation of the transformer is that it does like a constant depth computation. So like it's limited in sort of the complexity of the computation that it can do for a given like input text. And I'm guessing probably over the next 5 years, people will do a lot of things to try to like increase the complexity of the computation that can be done, so that it might not just be like a constant depth neural net, but maybe some like something that varies in depth for like and does more complicated computations for more complicated questions. Like right now, when you ask a question to GPT, like it does the same amount of computation for a given length of input, regardless of how complicated your question is. And something that might be like one possible advance would be to like use the amount of computation that is necessary for the difficulty of the question. That would be like a very simple like thing that should be fixed. Like it seems like broken about the current way of doing things. And I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen and what's going to happen in 5 years, but I imagine, you know, it seems like every five to 10 years, like something does change. Like before the transformer, a big thing that happened like 2011 or 2012, I think 2012 was like AlexNet was the first time that you had like a very demonstrable, like neural nets are doing something much like in a very successful way and like recognizing objects and images that like wasn't done before, and that happened like a little more than five years before that, before the transformer, or I guess it was 5 years, yeah. So yeah, I would expect that maybe another 5 years will be another thing. Maybe sooner, I don't know. Yeah.
Obrigado, professor Raildo. Thanks, Bill. We have one question over YouTube and another question from a student here from veterinary medicine. So then I think we can end it because we are already out of the time. Lívia, por favor. Mm-hmm.
Recently, I saw news about men creating AI girlfriends just to abuse them verbally. Do you think there's any way or form to control those actions? What is the limit in AI? What's punishable?
To stop people specifically to like create artificial girlfriends to abuse them. I mean, I imagine you could try to like create laws to stop people from doing such a thing. But like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's similar to the question before about regulation. There might be some like good regulation around that people can debate. I'm not sure what the options are. I mean, I could imagine if the men are creating the girlfriends and then they abuse them, but they stop abusing their real girlfriends, that might not be such a bad thing. So maybe you actually want us to make people do this more. I don't know. But yeah, it's similar to the question before. My opinion about the regulation is there's a feedback. My general opinion is like I don't know what the solutions are like concretely. I don't know, and if I don't know what the possible solutions are, I definitely don't have an opinion about like what they should be. Like it's very unclear what's possible, and then what you should do is even more unclear because we don't know what's possible with respect to like technologically we don't know what's possible. So yeah, sorry, it's a very non-answer, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a question over YouTube. He say another point is there any way to teach AI that it's doing something illegal? That's the first question. Then the second is AI aware that it's doing something against the laws? So.
I think in the long term, yeah, it might be possible to try to like encode laws within models such that like you could like the model could have a sense of whether it is violating a law. In the current form, like in the currently what works, like it would be very, very hard to do this in like the general sense of like somehow take the law and like embed it completely in a model. Like it's hard if you, one way to understand why this is hard is like, it's hard to get a person to do this. So like for everything that we're doing right now, like I can't tell you if there's something that we're doing right now that's illegal. I don't know. It depends on like what the laws are, I guess, in Brazil and here. And like there's a bajillion law, there's a lot of law text. And then you have to interpret that law, which is, you know, there's like professionals that are there, that's their whole job, is to just interpret the law. And they spend all the time doing that. And so like I can't do that personally. So I would expect that it's very hard to get it for a model to do that reliably. But I think maybe in the long term, I mean, in the long term, yeah, you could maybe do it in the general sense. But like as it is right now, it's hard to do in the general case. You can do it in a restricted sense in that like you can try to construct your model to follow a particular law. But the degree to which it will, like, depending on what the law, like I need an example, I guess, but like depending on what the law is, it will be more or less hard for it to do that. Like it might be very complicated to follow a law if the law is complicated. Yeah. Was there a second part of the question? I forgot.
Is AI aware that it's doing something against the laws?
Are there AI that are breaking laws now? Is that the question?
Yeah, I guess is it.
Probably.
I think it's that too.
There probably are. I don't know. I mean, like there's a lot of laws that are in place that like people aren't aware of, at least in the US. Like there's just like laws from like hundreds of years ago that people, like laws for silly things. I don't think I have an example off the top of my head, but there's like laws that nobody cares about anymore and they remain in place and you might be breaking. And so like in the same way, I imagine if like an AI system is constructed in some, like it's doing its job in the way it's supposed to be done. Maybe like it's a robot that like puts carrots in bags or something like that. Like maybe there's something that's doing that happens to be against the law for how you put carrots in bags because it's like using a bad material that's like you're not supposed to use this material in this state or something, or you know, like there's technology is like performing actions that might like be against the law and might be like at least that they're like the people who own that technology might be then like by proxy breaking the law. I think that's probably happening in some form or another. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would like to thank you for everyone who's watching us, the audience here at Paranaíba, and also the audience who is there over YouTube. I would like to thank you, Bill, for accepting my invitation and for spending your time talking to our students here. It was a great experience, and I'm sure everybody learned a lot and enjoyed it too. So wise. I can speak Portuguese now because I'm going to thank you, Professor Raildo. That is okay. Eu gostaria de agradecer também ao professor Raildo, né, por estar aqui participando com a gente, por ter se disposto a vir aqui nessa tarde, contribuir, né, com seus conhecimentos. Muito obrigada. Obrigada a todos vocês que estão aqui no auditório nos assistindo, né, ficaram até agora. Eu sei que é um desafio, às vezes, mesmo assistir em outra língua, né, mas é assim mesmo, é nos desafios que nos fazem crescer, né. Então, obrigada a todos, obrigado a todos que estão no YouTube. Em nome da Universidade Federal de Mato Grosso, eu agradeço a todos vocês por ter contribuído com a Semana de Desenvolvimento Profissional. Bom, thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you. This was fun. I hope it was interesting.
Yeah, it was. Thanks
Okay.
so much.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.